podcast where I strip away my layers and discuss body image issues and mental health. Not just mine, but yours as well, if you wish. I'm your host, Bear, and I'm thrilled to have you here today for this very captivating episode. Today, I'm diving deep into the realms of self-perception and the power of the mind, as I am joined by two incredible guests who are going to bring their own unique perspectives to this discussion. We have David, also known as the Hairy Hypnotist, and Rich, the proprietor of bearhotel.net. We're going to chat about body positivity, posing for photos, often in the nude, and we'll discuss hypnotism and how that can help with body image. This is a place where everyone is celebrated for who they are. So grab a cup of tea, sit down, relax, and join me as we explore self-acceptance. Joining me is Rich from the Bear Hotel and David, the Hairy Hypnotist. Let's hear from them. Rich, tell us a bit about yourself and what it is that you do.
So my name's Richard. I'm the proprietor of Bear Hotel, which is a arts project kind of celebrating diversity and body positivity. I've been doing it for 7 years, trying to kind of give those guys who don't usually get the attention some of the limelight, really. The kind of regular guys that are sexy, but not in the way that kind of mainstream media kind of celebrates people, really. So I kind of publish 2 or 3 guys a week. Kind of keep up the flow of guys coming through as much as I can, keep people happy. But I've been doing it for 7 years, and I never really thought when I started I'd still be doing it 7 years later, really. I really thought at the beginning I'd find it hard to find people to do it, and that has not been a problem for me. The volunteers are out there.
Very good. Thank you for that. David, tell us a bit about yourself.
Sure. So I'm David. I'm an American living in Amsterdam these days, so I'm an expat. I've been doing hypnosis online for several years, and I go by the name Hairy Hypnotist. If you search for that name, you'll find a lot about me, I expect. But aside from that, I'm also a big bear and had some issues with my body image when I was growing up. But fortunately, I've mostly turned that around, I would say, and I feel really good about myself these days and try to help other people to feel that way as well when I can.
That's brilliant. Do you, if you don't mind me asking, say you try to help other people turn their thoughts around, is that something you do through the hypnosis or just by talking generally?
A couple of different ways. I mean, everyone has the ability to just share their mind and tell people what they think is important. But yes, I also do both hypnotherapy and I also do erotic hypnosis online as well. So it's an interesting combination of those two, especially a lot of people, a lot of bearish guys have a lot of negative body image of themselves because, at least in part, because of the way that porn models are presented, because of what body types are considered to be sexy or not sexy. And sometimes, maybe it sounds a little strange to say this, but sometimes just helping someone to have a really good, hot, sexy time and celebrating them for their body and who they are can do really a lot of good in terms of helping someone to realize, hey, my body actually is nice, even if it's different from like the standard model type of attractiveness that I've seen in other places.
I'm taking all that in, and that is something we are going to come back to because that just sounds really interesting. I love the way you said all that, and you're right. I think for me, it's knowing that somebody else finds me attractive is something that does give me that small boost to help my own self-confidence. So I love where you're going with that. Rich, tell us about the Bear Hotel, about the different kinds of clients you get when they turn up. How I would imagine you sometimes get people like myself who might book with you to come and have these photos done and then get there and suddenly think this is a big mistake. Why am I doing this? Because I know if I was to go through that, that's exactly where my brain would go. I would turn up and it wouldn't matter how welcoming you are. My thoughts would be, why am I doing this? Nobody's going to want to see these pictures. So tell us about your experiences around that.
Yeah, I think you're right. Um, if you turn up, that's great. I do have people who literally just ghost me, don't respond to kind of, hi, I'm outside waiting at the hotel, where are you? And you never hear from those people again. So they booked in advance when it felt like a great horny idea. They thought, yeah, I really want some great new pictures. I really want to celebrate myself. And then the morning of the shoot, it's like, okay, perhaps I'm not quite feeling so confident. Um, yeah, I think everyone comes with a bit of trepidation. Like David is quite a confident guy. Not everyone is quite so comfortable in themselves. And that's part of the project, really. I wanted to kind of embrace the things that kind of make us different from everybody else. The skinny guys, the fat guys, the older guys, disabled guys who don't really ever get shown anywhere else. One of the kind of reasons I set up Bear Hotel was because there were lots of kind of berry photo projects in the world. And the people who did those projects were very kind of, oh yeah, this is body positivity, this is about diversity, and yet all their models were 35-year-old, slightly chubby muscle guys, 35, 40 years old, white, the type of the photographer I suspect. And I really wanted to kind of have a broad range of people in my project. So I kind of made a decision right at the start. I was gonna anyone who's expressed an interest, I would facilitate that. Even if I thought at the time, oh, you're not really Bear Hotel material, I'd actually go along. And actually, even those people I thought, oh, they're not going to fit in, I found things about them attractive. It's really weird when you start to look at people more objectively as rather being, oh, they're not my type, I'm going to ignore them. When you look at people, they've got nice cars, they've got great eyes, they've got a lovely smile. People are attractive even when you don't think they're sexually attractive. And that's what Bear Hotel was about. But to answer your question, yeah, I think people do come with trepidation, and some guys are doing it to kind of give themselves a body positivity boost. And I really try my best to make everyone look great. So part of the deal is I'm going to do my best to make you look amazing. But getting people through the door can be really hard, and some people's self confidence is so low they'll never come. Like I really wish I could get more super chub guys in through the door to do the project, but they don't feel sexy. I could
Yeah.
get muscle boys at a drop of a hat because they want to show off. They've spent the last 10 years in the gym perfecting their body. They want to show that body off. We know those guys. We see them. I've been in the park all day today because it's been a beautiful day in London. Guys are there with their shirts off because they know they look great and they want to show it off. Guys who are bigger and aren't conventionally attractive, I find really hard to recruit because they just don't feel it. And no amount of me kind of cajoling, coaxing, saying, I will make you look great, will get them in through the door,
Yeah,
which is
I
a real
think
shame because I want to kind of celebrate those people as well, really.
yeah, I think I would be if I was to book with you, I would be one of those people that I wouldn't ghost you because I hate things like that. But I would certainly I would meet you and I'd be saying, look, let's just not bother. Let's just have a cup of tea instead, and
Yeah.
coming with a number of different reasons not to go ahead because I would be one of those that wouldn't have the confidence to have those kind of photos taken. Yet weirdly, looking at your website, I'm looking at the men and I'm thinking, oh my God, all these men are so attractive. And again, I'm still thinking, yeah, but he's not going to want to photograph me because he's going to see me and think I'm hideous. Yet I look at all the other men that are on your site and I'm thinking, oh my God, these are really good pictures. These are really hot guys. Why would I want to, why would anybody be interested in seeing pictures like me? So I think I would be one of those guys that I would want to back out, but I wouldn't because if I booked it, because as I said, I wouldn't. I hate the idea of letting people down, so I wouldn't be backing out. But
And
yeah,
don't worry, we'd have that cup of tea because you can't get someone into the room and say, okay, nice to meet you. Get your kit off. Let's take some pictures. You just can't do it. People need breaking in a little bit. And the good thing about my project, I think, is it's a collaboration. You choose your pictures that we use. So, like, if you give me an hour of your time, I'll take 600 pictures easily. I'm very snap happy. David will tell you there are a lot of pictures there to be taken, and some of them will be terrible because your eyes will be shut, or I'll catch you in a really horrible kind of expression. But if you take a lot, you'll just catch that twinkle in someone's eye, you'll catch that facial expression. And so I go through and choose what I think are the best kind of shortlist, and then the model chooses the ones we use online. So there's always an element of kind of choice.
Yeah.
So like people think, oh, I'm not really sure I want to have my dick on the internet. Can I say dick on your podcast? Too late, I've already done it.
Yeah.
You can bleep me out if
It's
necessary.
not made for kids. Yeah.
I'm not really sure I want to be out there on the internet. So we'll do some pictures, and then if they choose not to do nudity, they choose the ones where everything's covered up. And that's fine by me. I want people to be really happy with the pictures. So if they're not happy, then they never got shown. And there is about 10 guys out of the 400 I've shot who looked at the pictures and said, actually, I don't like any of these. I don't like what my face is doing. I'm not feeling it. And so those have gone into the vault, never to be seen by anyone, which is a shame because they were great sets. But I understand people don't always kind of like the pictures. It's a small percentage. I'm happy with the percentage that we're running at the moment. But I want people to be really happy with the pictures. So if they don't like them, they don't get seen by anyone.
Yeah, I mean, I get to the point. My husband, he's not a photographer, but he takes, just with his phone, he takes some absolutely amazing pictures. He's got a great eye for detail. And I get to the point when he's taking photos that I can't look at them anymore because I'm looking at myself and I'm thinking I'm hideous. Why are you taking these? Why are you taking that picture? Why are you liking this one? They're just absolutely horrible. So my get out is to say, do you know what? You choose so that I don't have to. Would you ever have guys saying anything like that, letting you decide which is the
Yeah.
best?
So some guys say like you're the artist, you've taken these great pictures, you choose the 10, 15, whatever we're choosing, best ones. And I'm fine with that as well. But like most people want to have some element of choice. But if it really freaks people out, then I'm happy to choose for them. And I often ask them like, what do you want nudity? Do you want what do you want showing? What do you want showing? I always ask people, what's your best side? Now everyone does selfies, which are like face on. I don't think anyone really has a bad side anymore. But like back in the olden days, you'd have a good side and a bad side that you'd insist on the photographer taking the picture from. But I think that's gone out the window.
You say that, it's really weird. Whenever I do a selfie, I have a certain pose that I have to do because I know that's the way I look.
So which is your good side? Tell me.
It's my right hand holding
Okay.
up, looking up at the phone. If I do it with my left, there's just something about it that doesn't look right. But with my
I always look and like think, to me they look identical. I really can't see your good side from your bad side, but it's all about our personal choices, isn't
it? Yeah.
David, how did I? I was going to say, David, how did I meet you? I can't remember how you got into the project. I've shot David twice now.
Yeah. I don't remember for sure, but I think what happened is I have a number of friends in the London area who are in the kink and fetish community, and part of that is typically a lot of like photo sharing and such. And I think somebody mentioned that they had done a photo shoot with you a while ago, and I took a look at your website and I thought, these are great. I would love to be of this.
I always like friends of friends because you know they're not psychopaths. If someone I know thinks they're okay, that's like, okay, they're not going to be a total case. They're going to be okay. I recruit all over the place. I give out cards in bars and events. I recruit on the cruise sites. Like I recruit everywhere. Every handsome man I ever speak to gets asked if they'll do it eventually. So I recruit all over the place. I wasn't sure how we got in touch with each other, but that sounds about right.
There was a friend of mine who was having a shoot with you at Manchester Pride earlier this year. And I'd never heard of you. He told me all about that. And I started looking.
Well, that's my failed marketing then, isn't
it? I wouldn't say it's failed marketing. It's me. It's because I would see their photographer and be like, oh yeah, they're not going to be interested in me. And I'd move on straight away. But he told me all about you, and I looked and I thought, okay, this looks amazing. And then it was literally about 2 or 3 days later on Mastodon, David, you put up, I can't remember if you shared some photos of you just shared that you were going or that you'd been. I can't remember now what it was.
I think it was that Rich had posted a link to the photos, and then I like posted something to say, "Hey, this is my stuff. Go and check it out." And then you saw that and
I certainly did.
contacted me.
Yes,
And here we are.
and loved the images like I did with most of the ones on the site, to be fair. Okay, Rich, thanks for that. David, as a customer of Rich, as someone who has been one of his muses, tell us about your experience about turning up the first time, and actually start from the beginning. Tell us about making contact and how it all went and how you felt.
Well, this is assuming that I remember all of the details, and my memory is
Yeah,
shit, to be
I'm beginning
honest.
to rack my head. I was like, I don't remember any of it at all. There's too many people been through now. I can't remember anything about it. David
Yeah.
Sale was lovely. He was charming, he was witty, and I didn't.
Um, so working with Rich was not actually the very first time that I'd been photographed in a setting like this. I'd actually worked with other photographers in the past, although I remember it had been a little while since the last time that I did a photo shoot. Um, and of course, some people I felt more comfortable with, some people I felt less comfortable with. But with Rich, I felt immediately comfortable. And I think that's just because I could tell that he was really focused on what he was doing and like really wanted to get some really nice shots of the guys who didn't always get good pictures taken of them. And you could see that, you could feel that, and it was really a perspective of trying to get the best possible outcome for both of you. And that is a very empowering feeling to feel like there's someone who's working with you instead of against you. So I've
Yeah, that's a lovely way of saying it. How did it feel actually having the photos taken? You know, you're posing, you're naked in front of the lens.
Well, not all the photos were naked. Some of them were, some of them were not. But yeah, I remember feeling like some of the positions that he asked me to get into were a little bit awkward, but also kind of fun as well. And the whole like wearing a bathrobe and nothing else, or having that slightly open so that you could see the dangly bits was also kind of fun.
Yeah, I try to do different poses, and sometimes you ask people to do something, you just think, "Oh, this isn't really working. That was a stupid idea." But like, you never know. Sometimes they're great, sometimes they're terrible ideas. The thing is, you can't really plan in advance because you never really know what the hotel gods have given you in any room. You might have great light, you might have great things to sit on, you might not. You're just never really sure what you're going to get. So you can't really plan shoots in advance. You just have to do it. And I'd say I do ask people to do kind of weird things, and sometimes they work, sometimes they don't.
So has anybody
Yeah.
ever said no to something you've asked them to pose? Some way you've asked them to.
Um, well, I'm quite sensitive to kind of like watching for people, and you can always tell if you ask someone to do something and they don't feel right, they look so awkward. So you kind of know straight away, oh, this isn't working. Let's do something else. Because like you ask people to do like I don't know, just kneel up, and if their knees are bad, like I've got a bad knee, I know what it's like. If you're kneeling up and it's causing you pain, you're not gonna look comfortable. So
No.
like you kind of, I'm always watching for people to look uncomfortable because I don't want because they're never going to be great pictures. So like I'm always kind of watching for people whether they look comfortable or not. And if they're not comfortable, then you just do a different pose. It's fine. But like you try things, and sometimes they work out and it's great. Sometimes they don't work out. That's life.
I mean, that sounds like a metaphor for life in general, to
Yeah,
be honest.
exactly. Yeah, that's how I live my life in generally. Really, sometimes things work out, sometimes they don't. You just get on with the next thing.
So, David, when it came to choosing the images, how was that process? Because I know for me, as I said earlier, I would get to the point where I would say, look, just you choose, because I wouldn't want to look at them. Were there any there that you were like, oh God, no, I can't, I don't use that, please don't use that? Or were, and were there others that you were like, this is my favorite? Tell us about that process.
So I understand the perspective that you're coming from with having a really negative self-image and not liking the photos that you see. I'm lucky to be in a situation where I have a much more positive self-image these days. I remember back when I was first coming out of the closet, I had a really negative self-image, and I recognized those feelings that you're describing. But those were not the feelings that I had when I was looking over the photos that Rich sent me. It was all either like, oh, this is cute. I like this one. Or that one, maybe, I don't know. It's all right, but I don't love it. And going through the pictures and just feeling like my level of enthusiasm for them, which was usually somewhere between tepid and really excited.
Well, hopefully I've filtered out all the ones where you look terrible and dorky and you had one eye open and one eye shut. Hopefully I've
Yes.
kind of filtered those ones out because we
I
all
think
have
you
them.
did, yes.
We all have those pictures, don't we? We think, oh my God,
Hmm.
what was I doing? What was I doing with my face? So hopefully I've filtered those out for people by the time they get the kind of the 50 or 60 to choose from.
Hmm.
So
That's the idea.
from a point of view of as someone who's posed, if someone came to you and said, "I'm thinking of doing this, but I'm nervous," what would you, David? What would you say to them to overcome those kind of nerves?
So I think the most common response you would get is, "Oh, don't be no nervous. That's silly." And I know from personal experience that is one of the worst things to say to somebody
Yeah, yeah,
because that is invalidating their feelings. Someone has just told me how they feel, and I'm telling them, "No, you're wrong to feel that way." And I don't want to do that because feelings are valid, even feelings that I disagree with or that I can't relate to. So if someone told me that they wanted to do this, but they were nervous about it, I would say, well, I think it'll be a really fun experience. I had a good time, and I bet that if you give it a shot, you'll probably find yourself enjoying it more than you expect, especially because, as I said, you're working with someone who is really invested in getting some really good looks from you. And honestly, you don't have to believe that you look attractive. It's enough to understand that someone else believes that you look attractive and to just go with that. And I think that's a good way of helping people to recognize, hey, even if I'm not feeling it, maybe others are. And that's kind of cool.
yeah. I mean, that's very much the similar kind of road I go down with my own feelings when I'm having particularly bad days. I remember that it's I remember that there are lots of other people that find me attractive and that don't think that I'm this hideous monster, which to be fair is where my head goes sometimes. Now it's rare it goes that dark, but sometimes it really does because I have those moments where I just can't stand how I look. I don't want to leave the house. And the way I get over it is to sit and think, well, do you know, there are other people who are invested in me as a person. My looks aren't all my worth. Do you know, I'm worth more than my looks. And I go down that route. And that kind of helps me. And I know exactly what you mean about, you know, saying, or, you know, you shouldn't feel that way because it does invalidate it. Thankfully, my support networks are like you. They know that that's not the right way to handle those kinds of things because it does invalidate your feelings when somebody says that to you. So yes, I do think about how my husband particularly views me because I know he adores me as I am and not just how I look. He adores me as for the person that I am. So that, you know, that kind of brings me out of those dark moments, thankfully. Where,
And
sorry, go on.
actually, I also want to mention because you and I are video chatting right now so we can see each other. And I just want to say, I think you're an attractive guy, genuinely.
Thank you very much. I'm gonna start
Oh,
blushing.
he's so made you say that. But it's true. You are. You're a big bear. Does the bear attention not help to kind of alleviate that kind of body of confidence into you've got? Because you're a big bear. I'm a big bear. I know there are people out there who I'm the ultimate for them. Not everyone. It's a small percentage of the population, but that validation is enough for me to kind of make me feel sexy. Does that not make you kind of feel more comfortable?
Sometimes it really does. There's an event in Ireland here in Dublin that happens every couple of months. It's called Geared, and it's a night for people who like sportswear, who like leather, who like bears. all that kind of thing. And I went to it for the first time about 12 months ago. And I went with a couple of friends, and I was very much, I can't go, I can't go. We were in the hotel room, and I was saying, no, I can't go, I'm not going. You go, I'll stay here, and I'll meet you in the bar afterwards. I'm not going. And in the end, I kept doing my usual thing, but look, it doesn't matter about what everybody else thinks. It's Brad's the important one. So off I went in, and I would say within half an hour, I had got my shirt off, and I got a kilt that I was wearing. I was just wearing my kilt and boots, and I had so many people come up to me and tell me that I was the most attractive person there. But I'd say it took another good hour, hour and a half for it actually to sink in that they weren't just saying it, they actually meant it. Because that's where my head goes when people start saying that, oh, you're just saying that to try and make me feel relaxed, try and make me feel comfortable. And there were guys in there that were the exact same as me. They were big, they were hairy. There were guys that were big and not hairy. There were guys that were more hairy than I am, but not as big as I am. So there was literally all sorts of guys in there. But it took a good couple of hours for it to sink in that these people weren't actually saying that. After that event, I would say I spent 2, 3 months on this huge high. This event was, for me personally, was so empowering because I just had this huge confidence boost, and things like that I will use as well to get out of any negative headspace. I'll remember that night, and I've been a couple of times since. There's another night that started up that we're off to next weekend, that's part of Dublin Pride, and that's going to be a similar kind of thing. And I know for a fact I'm going to have the same kind of feelings as we walk through the door. I'm going to be, no, nobody's going to want me here, and think this was a waste of ticket price. Why am I bothering? I'll sit at the bar and I'll see you when everything's done. But I also know that after an hour, my shirt will be off and I'll be bopping away and I'll feel comfortable again. And I think it's surrounding myself. It's not just surrounding myself with the thoughts, but surrounding myself with people who are the same as me and think the same as me that has helped me start to overcome it. And this podcast has been a huge help. I started this because a therapist actually said to get my feelings out there and write a journal. And I would write a journal anyway, and there's no way I'm letting anybody read it. So she said, well, why don't you do a podcast? Why don't you record it and let somebody listen to it? So I did, and the help this has been amazing, because I've suddenly discovered that I'm not alone. Even though realistically I knew I wasn't, you still have those feelings of loneliness and isolation. And the responses I got from people saying, I hear you, and this is my story, and people giving advice and tips, and it's not unwelcome advice. I know a lot of times people give advice and they worry about it not being welcomed, but the amount I've got, and it's all been taken in, it's all been stuff that I've used and can use. So yeah, I think it's a big process to go through, and knowing other people find me attractive is certainly something that helps me overcome my own dislike of myself. Yeah.
And it's not every. Go on,
if you don't mind, I actually have a similar story of my own experience to share that's like that. Although, Richard, you had something to say as well, and I don't know if it's short or long.
No, you
Mine's
go,
going to be
go
long.
for it.
Okay.
Go for it.
So I remember when I was growing up in the United States, I was living near Washington, D.C., and I was maybe 17 or 18 years old, and I went to my very first Pride event in Washington, D.C. And this was at the time when I was, a nervous teenager. I felt very self-conscious about my body. I had never felt like I liked my body while I was in my teenage years. And I compared myself to all of these like attractive models that I saw on television or in magazines or whatever, and thought, I'm too fat, I'm too hairy, I'm too this, I'm too that. And I never really felt like I was an attractive person. Now, despite that, I did have access to the internet, and I knew that there was this category of porn called bear porn. And so I knew intellectually that there must be people who find my body type attractive because apparently that's a category that exists. But I had never met anyone who found me attractive, at least as far as I knew. So I had the thing that my brain was telling me, which was you could be an attractive person. And there was the thing that my heart was telling me, which was no, you're definitely not. But I went to this Pride event in DC, and it was during the summertime, of course. And the summers in DC can be pretty darn warm, depending on the day. So I go there, it's this outdoor fair, and there's lots of people walking around, and several of them are shirtless because of the heat. And at first, I look at that, I'm like, oh, they're so attractive, but there's no way I could possibly join them. Absolutely not. I'm not showing off my big belly in public. No way. But it got to the point, it was so hot that I really started feeling like, okay, I either need to like go inside and find some air conditioning somewhere, or I need to take off my shirt as well. And remembering the whole thing about the bear porn, remembering that at least in theory, there are some people who might find my body attractive, was what got me over the hump to actually take off my shirt. And I think it was not even 5 minutes after that that somebody walked by and made a comment to me that stuck with me for the rest of my life. To this day, I don't remember what he looked like or who he was. We never talked aside from this. I was walking one direction, he was walking the other direction. He saw me and made a comment and kept on walking, and that was it. I didn't have any contact with him, but I remember the exact words that he told me. He looked me up and down and he said, "Woof, I don't know what you're doing, but keep on doing it." And that was it. He just kept on walking. And it was the first time that somebody had complimented me on my body and made me feel attractive, made me feel like I was someone who could be admired rather than who would just be disgusting. And it boosted my ego and my confidence and everything so high, and I was just giddy for the rest of the day. And as I said, this guy, like, I don't know who he was. He didn't have any reason to lie to me. He just, made this comment and kept walking, and it made me feel so empowered. And that was the start of me turning around my body image issues. And to this day, I try to give out compliments to people whenever I can, as long as I feel they're deserved. I don't want to tell someone something that I don't feel is genuine. But as long as I can give someone a genuine compliment, I try really hard to do that because God, it did so much for me.
Hmm. That's a fantastic story. I love how much that helped you. And similarly, my first night at Geared, at the end of there was a guy who was hovering around, and he kept telling me that I was the hottest guy there, and he'd had far too much to drink by this point. So of course, in my head, I'm like, yeah, you're drunk. That's the only reason you're saying that, because you've got your beer goggles on. At the end of the night, we were the last people to leave. And as we stepped outside, this guy is outside, and he came up and he said, "Can I have a hug?" He said, "I have been watching you all night, and all I want is a hug from the hottest guy that was there on the night." And of course, by this point, my head, my ego at this point is just absolutely huge. And like you with that one phrase, that was one of the phrases that it's one of the phrases that I use, that I say to myself. I think back to that very moment. I think back to stepping out of the club, to seeing him and hearing him say that. And regardless of whether he was drunk or not, the fact that he said it and the fact and how it made me feel, that's one of the things that I can use to pull myself out of those dark times. So yeah, I do. I completely get where you're coming from with those phrases. It's
I think every big guy's got a story like that, though, haven't they?
yeah.
I moved from rural North Yorkshire where I'd had boyfriends, I'd had sex, I wasn't unattractive, I certainly didn't feel myself to be anything special. A big fat sort of 21, 22-year-old moving to London, going to a club called Bulk, which no longer exists. It was like the prototype of XXL and what would come later. And just discovering suddenly you're this object of desire in a way that it had never been before. It's so intoxicating
Yeah.
to gone from just feeling like a big lumpy guy to suddenly being someone's ideal sexual partner. It's just like it's incredible. My mind just spun that I could be Naomi Campbell in this world. It's incredible.
Yeah.
And
It
it's all
really,
about context, isn't it?
the happy endorphins that it releases is just incredible. Um, David, you said earlier when we were doing the introductions, you were talking about the whole hypnosis side of things. What kind of, if you're able to talk about this, I don't know whether you can.
I am.
But what kind of things would you do hypnosis wise to somebody who had body image issues around their weight or around their hair? Because that's me. My two issues are my hair and my weight. So what kind of things hypnosis wise would you do that would help?
So when it comes to changing someone's perspective about someone or about something in their lives, I should say, the best tool that I have is reframing it, which is to say, you come at this idea, at this image of yourself from the same or almost the same direction every time, because that's the way that your brain works with this idea. You have all of these associations with this aspect of yourself, with this idea of yourself. And it's very hard to truly disconnect from those associations and come at it from a new perspective. But reframing is about saying, okay, let's not engage in the same patterns and in the same associations that you've had before, and come at this from a different perspective, from the help of someone who, by definition, isn't you and doesn't have those same associations that you have. And it's really easy for anybody to do this, but the thing is, hypnosis helps people to get into a more suggestible state of mind, which simply means that ideas that they might normally brush off and not take seriously become a lot easier to seriously consider, to think about, and to potentially accept if they feel comfortable doing so. So, if your issue is that you have a lot of really negative self-image around the way you look, around other aspects of yourself, then what I would do is I would help you to find aspects about yourself that either you like about yourself or that other people like about you. And the reason I say one or the other is because I know a lot of people get so deep in this negative self-reflection that they no longer find anything about themselves appealing or attractive. But it's usually possible to recognize that other people do. So by hooking into that idea, by helping people to understand that they can be seen as attractive and they can start to build those associations with their body instead of the more negative ones that they've had so far, that helps people to change the way they feel when it comes to this sort of thing. Because changing the way you think is one thing, and it is important. And there's a lot of different ways that you can change someone thinks, such as education or working through things in a logical step-by-step manner and realizing, okay, my previous thought patterns were wrong, logically speaking, and so I should start to try to figure out how to work with this new information that I have. That's changing my thought patterns. But changing your emotions, that is harder because emotions don't make logical sense. And emotions typically don't respond to the same sort of tools that we use to convince someone on an intellectual basis. Emotions are, well, emotional. And usually the best tools that help with someone changing their emotions is helping them to recall positive experiences, helping them to see the way that other people feel, and using that sort of empathy that everybody has to a greater extent or lesser extent to acknowledge that those emotions might be different for other people, and that's okay. So I think that's the way that I would handle it.
Would you ever, in one of these sessions, would you ever explore blame? Because I, rightly or wrongly, I blame a lot of my body image issues on growing up in the era when the only attractive gay man was somebody who was smooth and had a six pack. That's all that was in any of the magazines, even like pop stars and that were in any of the, the teenage magazines and all the gay mags, all the adverts. They were always these smooth, hairless guys with these ripped abs that I I thought that's what I had to attain to become attractive to other men on the gay scene. So now I know that that's not true. That's not what I needed to do to be attractive. I know that now, but at the time I didn't. So would that be an avenue you would ever look at, like any kind of, thing like that, any blame?
So, as I said, there's the intellectual side and there's the emotional side. Blame can occasionally be a useful tool from an intellectual perspective. If you find yourself constantly blaming yourself, then it can be helpful to explore other reasons why maybe the problem is not with you, or trying to figure out what the root cause of the problem is from an intellectual perspective so that you can find better ways to solve the problem, again, intellectually. However, blame is never a useful tool from an emotional perspective because emotionally speaking, blame is something that makes you feel vindicated briefly, but it removes your locus of control. It says that I'm feeling this way because of something external to me, and therefore, emotionally speaking, that's enough. I don't need to work on myself anymore. All of the emotions that I feel are justified and never need to change because they come from an external focus of control rather than myself. So when you're talking about emotional maturity and emotional growth, blame is not helpful, even when intellectually speaking, you can see that the problem is external to you. That might be true, but the problems that you're dealing with are specific to you. And emotionally speaking, you need to work through them with that understanding.
It's interesting that you say that. So, one of the, as I said, I often blame the media growing up for how I feel about how I felt about myself back then, because the images I was presented with were nothing like me. And as far as I was concerned, without a lot of cosmetic surgery and laser hair removal, I was never going to attain any of those images. And when I first started this podcast, I think in episode 1 or episode 2, I talk about the media and how much I blame them. And someone emailed me and said, I completely understand where you're coming from, but they're not to blame. They're a catalyst for it. They're the people that make you think about it, but they're not to blame. And you need to stop looking at who to blame, because if you're looking at who to blame, you are validating why you feel the way you do. And you need to not do that. And until they said it, it wasn't something I'd ever thought of. And I was very much, no, it's their fault. They're the reason I am the way I am. And I'm going to make them pay. And I'm going to write to the Gay Times and tell them you need to start putting plus size people in your adverts. I'm going to tell Attitude how wrong they are for all the different pictures they have in there. And that was very much my thought process. And when this person emailed and said all this, to start with, initially, I was like, no, you're wrong. They are to blame. And I went away and thought about it for a while and thought, actually, yeah, you're probably right. And so it's nice to hear somebody else say, essentially exactly the same thing. So thank you for that.
And we're all three guys battling against the same battle. None of us are
Absolutely.
conventionally attractive, but we're all hot in our own way. And it's not like someone out there, they didn't have a meeting and decide this is what masculine should be. Who are you fighting against? Who are you blaming? The whole world? It's this nebulous concept, isn't it, of what is hot at any one point that changes through cultures and societies. Who are you blaming? It's like this
Absolutely.
nebulous kind of there isn't some cabal of hotness in the world,
There
but
isn't?
well,
What? I've clearly been
sometimes I
misled.
wonder. But I just think I don't know. Blame just seems such a negative emotion to kind of focus on when there isn't someone to blame.
Yeah.
Because who are you fighting against?
Out of interest, Richard, your thoughts around like the media and their portrayal of gay men in images, given the fantastic work you're doing in the community. Like again, as I said, the Gay Times, Attitude, lots of other magazines like that, all the adverts. Now I know it's not their fault, they're just put the advert in that they've been sent by the advertiser, but they all seem to still, the majority of them still seem to be this this huge, very twink or muscle like people.
Yeah, I don't know. I've always kind of felt just it was another part of life that I'm living my life, and over there are guys with six packs and kind of pecs and muscles, and they've shaved every inch of their bodies, and that's just another part of life. It's never really bothered me that much because I've just never really felt it was part of me or my life or the people that I was surrounding myself by. Like I'm happy to look at a great body. Don't get me wrong, but I've always kind of felt not really impinged by it because I was so far away from that. I've been a fat kid. I was a fat teenager, fat from my 20s, 30s, 40s. I'm into my 50s now, still fat. It's just never been part of my life. It's like almost like being at a zoo and they're like another species away from me, the kind of hot, hairless muscle boys. It's great they're there. I'm happy to go to the zoo and watch them freeing themselves,
Yeah.
but it's like a different life from the life I've led and the people that I've surrounded myself lead. It's like another species, really. It hasn't really affected my self confidence so much. Like I remember when I was in my 20s and I'd go to Soho in London and like I'd be made to feel very uncomfortable in certain spaces, in certain bars, and it was made very clear to me that I wasn't really welcome there because I didn't look like everybody else. But I've always found places where I have been welcomed, and so they're the places I choose to spend my money in and spend my time in. So I don't know. I guess it does impinge on us, but actually, it's never really affected my self-esteem that much, really. So I guess I'm quite lucky that way.
Thank you for that. So we're coming close to towards the end of our time. I have two things I want to do before we do finish. Firstly, David, very quickly, I wrote it down so that I wouldn't forget because it's really piqued my interest. Tell me about this erotic hypnosis.
Sure. So a lot of people, at least in the circles that I go in, are familiar with BDSM, with tying people up, with whipping, flogging, all sorts of tools and implements to control somebody from a mental perspective. I like to describe erotic hypnosis as BDSM from a mental side rather than a physical side. There are definitely people out there, some kinksters who get off on the idea of being controlled not just through chains and being treated physically roughly, but also being manipulated to a certain degree. That can be very hot for a lot of people. And that is a lot of the people that I work with when it comes to erotic hypnosis. Now, that being said, there's many different applications of this technique. One of the simplest ones is simply using hypnosis to boost the physical sensitivity of your body for a little while, because of course, all of the sensations that you feel, they're all processed in the brain. And so you can use hypnosis to alter, play around with, or enhance those physical sensations. And that can be a very powerful experience for some people. Beyond that, there's all sorts of other fantasies that you can explore. I've used hypnosis to make certain guys feel like a stripper or a porn star that I've hired for the night to feel that incredible sense of confidence and sexiness, and performing for me is a lot of fun, both for them and for me. And there's a ton of other ways that you can use it as well. In essence, erotic hypnosis is simply saying that the largest sexual organ in your body is your brain, and finding imaginative ways to play with that sexual organ.
I love that. Thank you very much. Thank you for explaining. So finally, thank you both very much for coming on and for being so open and talking about your experiences and about the different things that you do. If people, Rich, if people wanted to find out more about the Bear Hotel, where would they go to find out?
Bearhotel.net or on Instagram on Bear Hotel. I'm all over pretty much everywhere, but they're the two main sites. Always looking for interesting guys. There's a room waiting for Bear when he's ready to do it. David, you're always welcome back. But yeah, bearhotel.net is my website.
Brilliant, thank you. And David, if somebody wanted to find out more about either the body image hypnosis or hypnosis in general, or even the erotic hypnosis, how would they get hold of you?
So I post on my Mastodon social media, and the easiest way to find me is just to go to hairyhypnotist.com, and it'll take you directly there. That is Hairy, Hairy Hypnotist. Alternatively, you can just go to the hypnoguys.com Mastodon instance. That's the one that I run. You can also email me directly if you want to send a message to hairyhypnotist@gmail.com. And you can also find other ways of tracking me down on the net, but I'd say those are the biggest ones.
Thank you very much for that. I genuinely can't thank you enough for coming online and joining me on the podcast. And I hope everybody enjoys listening to this as much as I have enjoyed talking to you both. So thank you very much.